Good morning. Let's sing together a morning song. Hymn number 318 out of the gray hymnal. You can either go to the hymnal 318 or the lyrics will be projected up on the screen. And if you're joining us online, you can find the lyrics posted in the chat. I invite you to participate however you want to, sitting or standing, but let's sing together.
Good morning. Welcome to the Olympia Unitarian Universalist Congregation worship service. We welcome each of you to this celebration of love and to this congregation, whether you are joining us online or in person. The OUUC community comes together in the mutual promises and possibilities of our covenant. We envision an interconnected world that is loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become. We're so glad that you are here today. I'm Des McGarran, and I use he, him pronouns, and I am a member of your worship arts team. Leading worship with me today is Reverend Carl McKinley, OUUC's affiliate community minister. Troy Fisher, our music director, and Sarah Lewis, the director of community and faith development. Here's a few things I would like to share about our service today. We are streaming live on Zoom and YouTube, and the service is being recorded. For those here in the sanctuary, you can see subtitles on the screen in front here. We are a multi-generational community, and we value our young ones. Kids, babies, and teens are welcome in the sanctuary. We have fluffy, or as I like to call them, squishy seating in front, so you can be just as comfortable with those of us online. There is also nursery care and story time program for children in the classroom wing. We are grateful for the many hands that helped make worship happen this morning. Thank you to the ushers and greeters, the kitchen crew, the tech team members, and all who contribute in so many ways. After the service, everyone will have the chance to discuss reflection questions offered by Reverend Carl. For those online, we invite you to go into a break room for a virtual coffee chat. For those in person, please feel free to stay for coffee and fellowship in the Commons afterwards. At 11:30, after the coffee chat, please return to the main room or sanctuary for Melanie Ransom's talk show. Today's guest is Sally Brennard, OUUC's Volunteer of the Month. After the 5:30 community dinner this Thursday, join us for karaoke night with a focus on love songs. That starts at 7 p.m. There are many things happening at OUUC. Check out the Tuesday electronic update or the website for the most up-to-date information. Now, let us open our hearts and minds as we prepare for worship. It is good to be together.
This morning, we join Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition. Let us light our chalices together with these words from Maureen Killeran. And as I read a line, I invite you to respond with the words, "Let there be light." As the kindling of this chalice calls us to community, let there be light. As the flame of this chalice reminds us of our values, let there be light. As the glow of this chalice encourages us to hope, let there be light. Good morning. Good to see everyone on this Super Bowl Sunday. Our opening words are adapted from those of Manish Mishra Marzetti. She writes, "The ground shifts, sometimes slowly, sometimes like an earthquake, reminding us that the solidity we often love and seek is an illusion. The crumbling dust of the desert plains, the moist fertility of farmlands, the eroding coastline of tidal shores, all are changing. New experiences lead to new truths, which foster evolution. The natural course of life always pushing us toward greater understanding of what it means to be human. Everything about our existence points toward change, flexibility, and dynamic recreation. And it's hard because change involves loss. Can we hold those losses well while not holding ourselves back? The ground shifts, sometimes slowly, sometimes like an earthquake. Nothing is static. Come, let us worship together.
And let's sing together again, hymn number 121, We'll Build a Land. Carolyn McDade, who is the lyricist for this hymn, has approved the use of the non-binary language in the chorus of "Come build a land where people together instead of brothers and sisters together." So just pointing that out to you, come build a land where people together.
Faith. Good morning. The story that I have to share with you today is called The Parable of the Long Spoons. And there's disagreement in the storytelling community exactly where this story originates from. But so it's one of those that could come from many places. And in this story, there's a person who really wants to understand heaven and hell. And this person meditates on the question, asks all the wise people, asks their God to explain it. And one night they have a dream. And in their dream, they are transported to see hell. And at first, it doesn't seem like it's all that bad. There's a big table covered in delicious food, a giant bubbling pot of the best smelling soup. And there's people all around this food, but all the people have really long spoons. And so they're trying to feed themselves, and they're reaching for that delicious food, and they just can't get it in their mouths. And so the people are perpetually hungry, dissatisfied, frustrated, starving even, in the midst of all of this bounty of amazing food. Then the person in the dream was transported to see heaven. And guess what? Heaven was basically the same. There was an amazing pile of food, delicious soup. It smelled wonderful, and there were people gathered all around this food. And they still had the really long spoons. Why, they also couldn't feed themselves. But in heaven, the people were fed. Because in heaven, the people were using those long spoons to feed each other. Thus ends our story.
Each Sunday, we express our gratitude by joining together in service to our community and to something greater than ourselves. The offering collected here does two things. It supports the ongoing work of OUUC, which is also supported by our regular pledges. This offering also supports an organization that serves our community in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. Our Share the Plate organization for January and February is the Community Kitchen. This is what they share about their work.
Hi, my name is Turtle, and I'm the program supervisor for the Community Kitchen. And we would like to say thank you to the Olympia Unitarian Universalist congregation for being a part of the Community Kitchen. You are an amazing bunch of folks and a blessing to all of us and all those in need. Your contributions help the Community Kitchen produce more than 100,000 meals a year for our hungry neighbors, most of which live outdoors and are unsheltered. Due to the severity of poverty and vulnerability felt by communities, your gift has provided the purchase of a life-sustaining, nutrient-rich food that nourishes the young and old alike. Many members in your congregation volunteer to prepare and serve meals at the Community Kitchen, and because you're a part of the ongoing need, your resources has fed tens of thousands of people and produced millions of meals since its founding 2 decades ago. Our partnership can accomplish more together than each can do individually as we combine our strengths and resources to live out our call to serve. And with that said, we are deeply grateful for you and your partnership, and know that together we bring the good news and loving presence of God to the poor and most vulnerable among us. So thank you, and for all of your love, time, and support to feeding those in need and being a part of the Community Kitchen. Thank you.
You can participate in the offering by making a donation online through the church website or by texting the number that will appear on your screen shortly. You can also mail a check to OUUC or place your offering in one of the baskets being passed to the ushers, by the ushers, excuse me. May the offering now be generously given as it is gratefully received.
Thank you all for your generous gifts. We come together this morning bringing all that is in our lives. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of life as we place stones in the water of community. You will hear a drum beat as we share today, and it brings into our awareness that our individual hearts beat, and together we create the heartbeat of community. Right now, I invite you to take a breath as we open our hearts to receive the complexity of all that is in our lives and in our communities today. For those online, I invite you to share from your heart by entering in the chat. This is a time to share all that you wish, joys and sorrows, and whatever else is in your heart. Those in the sanctuary can see your sharing on the screen. For those in person today, I invite you to come forward if there is something you would like to bring into this community. You may place a stone into the water as you hold your sharing in your heart. Please come up through the side aisles and return by the center aisle. Now let us hear the heartbeat of our community and reach out our hearts in love and care to all those who share. We place a stone in the water for all that has been shared online, shared from the heart. We place one more stone in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken. Please be in whatever way is comfortable for you as we come together in this time of prayer and meditation. Let us join our hearts and minds together in the quiet of this community of souls, holding in our hearts all the people of this earth, especially the people of Turkey and Syria, who are suffering such devastating loss following Monday's earthquake. May all those who mourn the loss of loved ones, their homes, their families, their sense of safety be comforted. And may all those working to rescue survivors be safe. May the world open its heart to the many needs of the people in those countries, offering aid and all possible support to those who have lost so much. Let us raise our hearts in love, committed to the possibility of understanding, deeper empathy for all in this world. Let us always remember that we belong to each other, and love is the sacred gift that surrounds all. May the spirit of love and compassion be always with each of us, bringing hope for abiding peace in our homes, our communities, and the world. Amen. Let us hold a moment of silence together.
Seated, sing together hymn number 210.
This week commemorates the 203rd anniversary of the birth of the social reformer and women's rights activist, Susan B. Anthony. In speaking of the meaning of the Constitution of the United States, she writes, "It was we, the people, not we, the white male citizens, nor yet we, the male citizens, but we, the whole people, who formed the Union. And we formed it not to give the blessings of liberty, but to secure them, not to the half of ourselves and the half of our posterity, but to the whole people."
Our second reading is adapted from the words of the French philosopher and author Albert Camus. Great ideas, it has been said, come into the world as gently as doves. Perhaps then, if we listen attentively, we shall hear amid the uproar of empires and nations a faint flutter of wings, the gentle stirrings of life and hope. Some will say this hope lies in a nation, others in a human being. I believe rather that it is awakened, revived, nourished by millions of solitary individuals whose deeds and works every day negate frontiers and the crudest implications of history. As a result, says Camus, there shines forth fleetingly the ever-threatened truth that each and every person, on the foundation of their own suffering and joy, builds for them. Last fall, I attended Seattle Arts and Lectures talk by John Meacham, the Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and biography, and one of my favorite thinkers. Meacham spoke about his newest book, And There Was Light, Abraham Lincoln and the American Struggle. Coincidentally, today is the 214th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. And as Meacham spoke, I was reminded of his 2017 book, The Soul of America, The Battle for Our Better Angels. I reread The Soul of America to see if by looking back at contentious periods when anxiety, intolerance, and extremism were powerful forces in this country, if I could see similar patterns today. As I read, I also considered the question as what it means for us as Unitarian Universalists, as people within a tradition of hope and imagination, a tradition committed to freedom and liberation. What does it mean for us? How do we move forward in such troubling times? How can we and other people of faith challenge ourselves and others to learn and grow in such contentious times? And in a broader sense, how can we not only learn and grow, but challenge ourselves and others to continue the critical work to fulfill this nation's and this Constitution's promise of liberty and justice for all, especially in a time when there is not agreement on what liberty and justice for all even mean. As we ponder these questions, I find a closer look at this country's nearly 250-year history offers some insight. Abraham Lincoln, elected president in 1860, was given the task of governing a nation at war with itself. He delivered his first inaugural address at the United States Capitol on Monday, March 4th, 1861. And at that time, Americans were more divided than ever. Indeed, this republic's democratic ideals were at stake. 7 southern states had already seceded from the Union before Lincoln took the oath of office. 4 more states joined soon after to form the Confederate States of America. And in that address, Lincoln denounced secession as anarchy. Majority rule in a free nation, he said, must be balanced by constitutional restraint. And desperately wishing to avoid a civil war, Lincoln ended his speech with these words directed specifically to the southern states. I am loath to close. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory stretching from every battlefield to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land will yet swell the chorus of the Union when again touched, as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature. Lincoln's plea to the better angels of our nature resonates certainly today. In the past few years, the actions and the rhetoric of some leaders have revealed those better angels sadly absent. We're experiencing partisan fury not unlike the fury Lincoln faced in 1861. Just this last Tuesday, President Joe Biden, in his State of the Union message, used similar or evocative words in his appeal for us to listen to the better angels of our nature as we face the social and moral issues in this country and in the world today. As John Meacham and other historians have long noted, fear, anxiety, even violence have been woven tightly into the fabric of this nation's history. And personally, I believe we can better understand and confront current issues by paying attention to their voices and to our past. This country's history, while recording many noble and heroic individuals and events, has not been free of deadly struggle. Fear of change brought by emancipation and empowerment of freed African Americans gave rise to the hate group, the Ku Klux Klan. Today's immigration crisis echoes the 19th and early 20th century conflicts that arose as immigrants from Asia and Eastern Europe were seen as threats to the livelihood and to the status of working class people in American cities. Anti-Semitism and xenophobia drove the isolationist rhetoric of the 1920s and 30s. The fear of some political views propelled Joseph McCarthy's anti-communist witch hunts of the 1950s. And of course, reaction to expansion of civil and voting rights to everyone in this country fanned the violent and deadly attacks on freedom marchers in the 1960s. This country has witnessed a never-ending struggle to live up to the ideals envisioned at its founding, ideals of liberty and justice for all, as Susan B. Anthony said in today's reading. Despite reactionary efforts to block change, the critical work to resist fear and bigotry and to ensure that every woman and man hold full rights as citizens has persisted. As the womanist theologian, Reverend Dr. Emily Towns reminds us, liberation is a process. Liberation is dynamic. It never ends. And today, as in the past, we turn to leadership. Not just political leadership, but cultural and moral leadership to guide this nation in the process of liberation. We look to them to articulate our guiding principles to help the country negotiate the chasm between our worst and our better instincts. John Meacham writes, "Our best moments have come when voices far from power, reformers, protesters, those who have been on the margins, have forced the powerful to take notice." Whether it was Andrew Jackson, who had to be called to task when he put down an early movement toward secession, or to support Lyndon Johnson, who as a white Southern Democrat was no friend of civil rights when he headed into the presidency. Our finest hours have come when presidential power has intersected with voices of protest to lead us to higher ground. And Meacham concludes, "My own view of the presidency is that from Lincoln to Lyndon Johnson, we have had deeply flawed, imperfect men so far, in charge of our affairs. But the eras in which we look back and the eras we want to either emulate or celebrate come about when leaders choose to reach beyond their base, to reach beyond their core and support and speak for a national as opposed to a sectional or partisan interest." Lincoln and other leaders who live in our memory have consistently urged all who would listen to turn away from violence and towards cooperation and altruism. These words have been echoed by many religious and spiritual leaders from around the world. Bishop Desmond Tutu, Pope Francis, the Dalai Lama, our own Unitarian Universalist president, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. They have all offered that same message: turn from violence toward cooperation and deeper understanding. Turn from rage and hate toward love. As citizens and as people of faith, we all have a role to play. And John Meacham offers some suggestions for ways to live into that role. First, enter the arena. Remain or become politically and ethically engaged, as many of you here in this room have been and are. Pay attention and express opinions when you evaluate a State of the Union message or political speech. Believing in something creates an obligation to make that belief known and to support it by adhering to principles of justice. Second, resist tribalism. Consider politics as mediation of difference, not warfare. Wisdom generally comes from a free exchange of ideas. That doesn't happen when everyone on your side agrees. It also entails being humble enough to recognize that only in the rarest of occasions does any single camp have a monopoly on virtue or wisdom or truth. Third, respect facts and reason. Weigh the merits of a given issue and double-check the information for validity. Step aside, even briefly, from parochial perspectives. President Truman once said, "The dictators of the world will say if you tell a lie often enough, people will believe it. But," as Truman continued, "well, If you tell the truth often enough, they'll believe it and go along with you. When facts and reason reveal lies, do not let them continue unchallenged. And finally, keep history in mind. It can help orient us to the present. A study of Joseph McCarthy's damaging impact on American lives offers a way to measure and expose demagoguery. Knowing how and why the Ku Klux Klan thrived during the era of Reconstruction and in the 1920s and into the 1930s offers a lens on today's hate groups. Knowing our past helps us live into the future. In that earlier reading, Albert Camus wrote, "If we listen attentively, we shall hear among the uproar of empires and nations a faint flutter of wings, the gentle stirring of life and hope." As people of faith, let us pay attention to those gentle stirrings of life and hope, to those stirrings all around us. They live in spiritual teachings and practices that help us navigate this complex political and cultural world. Help us live into our better angels. When we practice empathy, we're helped to connect the interests of others with our own. When we exercise self-control, we are helped to recognize consequences of our actions. And when we engage our moral sense, we hold before us values that govern how we interact with each other. In this way, we liberate ourselves from the myths and the mistakes of the past. No, this is not always easy. It helps to hold up, reread words that awaken courage and hope in us. Last week, we heard some words from Amanda Gorman's stunning inaugural day poem from January 2021, and I want to continue with some of her words because I believe they offer the spirit of an awakening. She writes, "We're striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of humanity. And so we lift our gaze, not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. Because being American is more than a pride that we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption." Yes, this is indeed the era of just redemption, and I believe Abraham Lincoln would really get that. He recognized that his work for liberty and equality would not end with his election or with his life. Yes, liberation is indeed a process, an ongoing process, imperfect in many ways, in many human ways, that never ends. And I believe that Lincoln, who was also imperfect in many human ways, was a person of deep faith. Not only religious faith, but faith in the resilience of the American people, in the goodness that resides within us, in the hope that burns eternal within the human spirit, in the power of abiding love. Recently, Unitarian Universalist Association President, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, said, "We know from these last several years the challenge, the loss, and the creativity and the possibility of these transitional times. And in such times, there's always a risk that fear and anxiety will dominate and lead people to cling more tightly to what has been. As Unitarian Universalists, as people working to fulfill the promise of this democratic republic, we must reject fear. We can live into the better angels of our nature by continuing to work toward communities of hope, of equity, of compassion, and of love. I leave you this message with these words from the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison in his poem, Letter from Our Better Angels. And we have some assistants right here at the side. Thank you. First, faith. Faith in yourself and trust in others. We know it can be terrifying to be vulnerable, but only when you share your softest side will we be able to break through. Next, hope. Hope is not an empty fairy tale. It is a true story of all the times human beings like you have found a way to create the future, though you didn't know how. And of course, love. Love that demands you cherish all people, not just yourselves and safety. Love that is not satisfied until every argument ends abruptly when one child says, "That hurts." There is so much to learn and relearn when you encounter the poor, the broken, the unhoused and unwelcome. You are looking, if you pay attention, at each one of us, calling you to answer your own prayers. If you want to change the world, first be sure you are changing yourself. Be tender, be kind, be at peace. Be all the things you wish for. Be your own better self. It isn't without cost, but it is always free. On this day, and in the days before each one of us, may we more fully live into the better angels of our nature. May we continue to hold hope for a strengthened democracy, for courage to face the challenges of changing times, for faith in those eternal values, justice, equity, compassion, and love. Amen. Let's just take a moment for silent reflection.
Let's sing together our closing hymn, hymn number 1028, out of the Till Hymn Book, The Fire of Commitment.
wine and you have a chalice, please join me as we extinguish our chalice here in the sanctuary with words adapted from those of Elizabeth Tarbox. Ours is a story of faith and hope and love. It is our need for one another that binds us together and keeps us at it when we would otherwise might despair. It is the holy we need, the eternal beyond our comprehension, and we can find it here working and worshiping together. There is indeed a transcendent value upon which we may set our hearts, and its divine manifestation is love. Amen, and peace be with you.
Let's sing together our unison benediction.